Literacy in Art, Music, and Physical Education. My name is Jessica Bacon, along with the other group members William Dietz and Julia England. In this presentation, Bill, Julia, and I will be answering the 4 questions. What are the literacy demands of the content areas? What are the texts typically used in the content areas? What are the new literacy used in the content areas? And how can the literacy coach support the content area teachers? My name is Jessica Bacon. As part of this presentation, I will be discussing the literacy demands in art, music, and physical education. Before I begin to discuss the literacy demands of different subject areas, I want to answer the question of what is literacy. From the Physical Educators as Teachers of Literacy articles, the quote states, "When the country's leaders, literacy professionals, and school administrators talk about literacy, they are talking about the ability to communicate effectively in a written and spoken language, the ability to read, write, speak, and listen." Literacy demands across the board require people to be able to read, write, speak, and listen. Literacy skills also allow people to communicate in a spoken language. As we know, literacy varies from different subject areas. A person can be literate when it comes to something they know much about, but what happens when they do not know much about something? Since they can speak, listen, read, and write, they can use those skills to in turn learn about new topics. Though literacy across the board is the same, there are different demands within different content areas. As in many content areas, one of the major literacy demands is vocabulary, and that holds true to literacy demands in art. The students must understand the specific vocabulary that deals with art to be able to further expand their knowledge about art. The teacher must provide the students with an understanding that there are different mediums of art, and meaning that art includes painting, drawing, performing arts, sculptures, photography, and even architecture and carpentry. The teacher must also provide the students with vocabulary for them to understand different art concepts. The vocabulary allows the students to have a deeper understanding of what they're learning and what they're actually creating. Examples of major terms fall under the categories of the principles of design, elements of arts, words found within a text for performing arts. The students must be able to understand the words that they are reading to be able to convey the words that they are reading. In the art classroom, the teacher must also provide the students with opportunities to explore art, create art, and respond to art. Once the students have adequate vocabulary knowledge in art, they'll be able to explore art deeper using vocabulary to respond to talk about what they're actually looking at. The students can look at different kinds of art and create the different kinds of art in the different mediums, and then they can evaluate and discuss different kinds of arts. The art teacher must also provide the students with an understanding of perception, meaning everybody doesn't look at art the same, and the students must understand that they can perceive art in a different way compared to someone else. And my next slide will go a little bit deeper into perception and art and how important that is within the content area of art. And finally, as stated in the article Disciplinary Literacy in Art and Design, it is important for the teacher to discuss background knowledge about the artist and the artist's purpose. Just as it is important in an English class to know the author's purpose before reading a text, the student should also study the author's purpose within the content of art to understand different information about the artist and maybe understand why they've created the different types of art that they did. As stated in the previous slide, perception is a major literacy demand in the content of art. Attached is a graphic which Julia found, and it could be utilized in the art classroom, focusing on how to perceive art. So the graphic focuses on images, but the students can use this idea of perception looking at any piece of art. So before they read anything about the artist or the art piece or anything itself, they look at the piece of art and focus on what do they notice, what feelings do they get, what does this remind them of, and what does it make you wonder about. And if you haven't noticed that those 4 different areas when you're perceiving art relate to making connections to text and questioning while reading a text. So if the students are learning about that in their English class, they can develop and use that knowledge to in turn perceive art. The literacy demands of music are similar to the literacy demands that were just discussed for art. As in any content area, vocabulary is essential to be able to be literate in that subject area. The students must understand essential vocabulary terms specifically to music. Some examples are tempo, tone, pitch, genre, instruments, and they can go on and on. Specifically for genres, the student should understand that there are different types of genres of music, so that relates vocabulary terms to actually listening to the types of music. Along with genres, it's important for the students to be able to understand that there are different types of instruments. So again, being able to listen to an instrument being played and being able to identify that instrument. Along with common music vocabulary terms, genres, and instruments, understanding symbols is important for music, whether they are singing a song or reading music notes to play an instrument. It's important that they understand the different symbols and what they mean to be able to be literate in that music subject. And the symbols kind of remind me of science and math, to where you need to understand those symbols to be able to be literate in that content area. Once a strong understanding of vocabulary is developed, as an art, the teachers must also provide the opportunity for students to explore different kinds of music. Once they've explored different kinds of music, they should give the students an opportunity to create music of their own. This music can be in the form of songwriting and instrument playing. After they have explored music, created their own music, written, sung, or played, they should have the opportunity to respond. The teacher should give the students time to analyze and respond to the music that has already been created and music they have created, and even sounds that they might hear. Just as is important when reading a text and important for understanding different pieces of art, understanding artists' backgrounds and purpose in music is also important for students to develop an understanding of the different types of music and maybe why the artist wrote what they wrote, lyrics-wise, or paying attention to the song notes, and it would help the students get a deeper understanding of the type of music or piece of music that they're listening to. From the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, their disciplinary literacy music site mentioned that literacy is one of the many tools that can assist in developing music skills and knowledge. Literacy tools can assist the students in developing music vocabulary, deciphering the graphic representation of sound called notes, and navigating a composition by understanding the musical roadmaps. It's up to the teacher to provide the students with the tools that they need to be successful and literate in the subject. And finally, the literacy demands in physical education again begin with vocabulary. In any content area, it's important to develop that vocabulary, the understanding of vocabulary terms, to really understand, to be able to develop literacy in that content area. Physical education vocabulary focuses around the body. The teachers must give the students proper knowledge about the human anatomy for the students to be able to learn how to take care of it. And much of the vocabulary terms focus on your body and your health. Along with vocabulary, the students must learn how to follow rules. So much of physical education instruction is speaking and listening. So the students are provided with the rules to be able to participate in a specific game or to be able to complete a task that they are supposed to be completing. To be able to understand why they're following different rules or why they're doing different things, it goes back to that vocabulary instruction on how it relates to their body and the different activities that they're doing. Along with vocabulary and following rules, a literacy demand in physical education is learning how to set goals. Along with setting goals includes record keeping. So starting off with recording what you begin with. So for example, how many sit-ups you can do in a minute, to then working out and working towards a goal, and then keeping a record of maybe weekly or monthly of how many you're meeting in that minute and what you're doing to achieve your goal. This year, my students had seen their scores from the beginning and towards the end, so they actually, in physical education, had worked on setting goals. Now, they didn't record their progress, but the gym teacher did for them. But as a teacher, they could show the students that it is important to keep records with their physical education, with setting their goals. Finally, they can use these to develop their own personal interests. So if they are into sports or different areas or different athletes, they can read about them and again, this goes back to their understanding of vocabulary to be able to interpret and read the different articles. So sports magazines, newspapers, and things like that, the students can read outside of school, and that can focus on physical education. The article I found was entitled Enhancing Content Literacy in Physical Education by Kathy Buell and Andrea Whitaker. The information in the article provided ways to incorporate literacy in the physical education classroom or gym. In the article, Buell and Whitaker explain, while general literacy skill is the ability to make meaning through reading, writing, visual aids, and reasoning, content literacy in physical education means that students can use general literacy skills to acquire knowledge in a specific movement, sport, or fitness context. To be able to learn and understand more about a content area, it is important to be literate in that content area. As teachers of the content area, they must first understand the demands of the content area to be able to teach and reach their students successfully.
Hi, it's Bill. Question 2. What are the texts typically used in the content areas, specifically art, music, and physical education? With this span that the three of us have, one being kindergarten and early childhood, one being 5th through 8th special needs, and one being 5th with half the class being accelerated, we really did get a good representation of a span between, say, kindergarten and 8th grade of what is currently being used. In art, we found that things that were being used to do art studies were biographies, articles from Scholastic or other magazines, anything that inspired artistic ideas, and videos, both music, graphic, and graphic novel type videos. When we interviewed the teachers, 2 quotes came to mind for art. In early education, it's very easy to incorporate literature. We do a lot of artist studies using art collection books for inspiration and copying artist styles, such as they use Van Gogh's Starry Night book, and the children then reproduce their own version of Starry Night. This was my kindergarten class. We also will do art projects as responses to read-alouds, literature that supports the imagination, needed to be an artist in the early grades. And then we also do different studies similar to Writer's Workshop. I teach units on types of lines and how to cut the safest way for the students. The students then use those different lines to create 3-dimensional art products and have the students dictate to us what they're expressing with their pieces. So it ties in a little bit of literature. In music, current best practices in early childhood support the foundations of oral language ability, being a predictor for literacy and future reading success, with rhyming songs, finger plays, songs that introduce onset and rhyme, songs to remember data and information such as days of the week, months of the year, addition and subtraction songs, things like that. Other things that have been used: music textbooks, songbooks, printed song lyrics, musical piece titles, biographies of past musical composers in the upper grades, and texts related to major music movements in the upper grades, like the Harlem Renaissance or the Jazz era or the blues. Things like that all are all things that are used currently to instruct in music. Some quotes that we've gotten from teachers we interviewed for instrumental music: we used a method book from the I Recommend series published by Alfred. They contain a series of warm-ups, lip slurs, chorals, things like that, scale studies. Outside that, this teacher reported that they don't use much in the way of text. In general, music, Julia, not to be confused with Julia England, part of our group, Julia in the school, and I make things up as we go, as our texts are a little out of date. That's a common thread, it seems. I'm not well versed enough on the Promethean board, but would very much like to be for general music. There are certain programs available for teaching music theory on the interactive boards. For instrumental and choral music, we're looking into implementing a program called Smart Music into our curriculum, which is a web-based music assessment program. The student plays into a microphone, which records them and assesses them according to what is printed in the music. Sounds interesting. This program also has many practice aids for at home and in the classroom uses. From Jenna Makos, middle school music teacher at West Hampton Middle School. In physical education, things that are already done: kinesthetic movements for literacy terms or words. I mean, it goes as far back as heads, shoulders, knees and toes, when I was teaching second grade last year, I did a punch out, a fist out for items in bold for informative texts, across the chest, the hand out flat for underlining, touch the forehead for headings, things like that. Game rules, newspaper articles, magazines, textbooks, again, for health and things like that seem to be a standard. Videos, and in health it says we use Glencoe health textbooks. This book gives us all the information for our classes because they are written with the health standards in mind. And some of the things that were pulled from the teachers that we know for phys ed, they basically, one school reported no texts are used. They use rules of sport, modify them, grade level safety, things like that. Football, no tackling, things like that. All, I guess, in written form around the room. A lot of phys ed workshops are centered around teachers sharing their games and activities. Then they modify it to make them harder if needed. Some games they make up from scratch, but again, no like written or literary. In health, though, Smartboards makes it a lot easier. They are quoted as saying, using Active Inspire makes lessons flow. Pictures, videos, in slides, especially teaching about the effects of drugs and alcohol or the birth cycle. Ooh. It makes it more understandable to watch a short video clip or pictures than just talking about it. I would probably use the video for that. The next one says they wish they could have the smartboard, but with it being a gym, it's difficult because of breakage. It's just too risky. But they use a TV on a cart for DVDs, things like that sometimes. And it says that they don't have access or use the library or computer lab for phys ed because the time is taken. From the middle school PE health teacher, Maria York.
Hello everyone, this is Julia England here. Through this presentation, I'm seeking to address the question, how can new literacies be utilized within art, physical education, and music classes? Within this course, we have extensively discussed the power of new literacies. Vaca and Vaca outline 5 ways in which new literacies should be used and the importance of them within their book, Content Area Reading. At first, it was a little challenging to think, how could these new literacies be applied? What tools could we use, and why should they be applied to classes such as art, music, and physical education? But it became clear that we need to consider who our students are, and how they're interacting with text in the real world now that everything is in the 21st century and we're using so many digital tools. So as you watch my presentation, try to notice if there are any tools that I present that maybe you could use within your classroom, because many of them kind of have easy applications within either an elementary, middle school, or a high school setting. As I was conducting my research, I found a very interesting article entitled The Arts, New Literacies, and Multimodality. And within this article, they emphasized a few things that I found extremely important in terms of education with literacies within these content areas. One of the major things that I noticed was that they discussed the need for teachers to challenge themselves to embrace the many forms of literacy that are embedded within our cultural interactions, and to remind teachers that texts are not always something to be studied or to be learned about. Texts are not always tools for learning. Of course, all of these things happen, but the emphasis is that text should be something that we allow our students to experience and live through. This is especially important within the content areas of health, physical education, music, and art. Within this article, I found that there are 2 forms of new literacies. I never knew this before. One is post-typographical. The second is emergent literacies. So under post-typographical, we have using tools such as PowerPoint, Movie Maker, Photoshop, and GarageBand within these content areas. And under emergent literacies, we have tools such as blogs, vlogs, podcasts, wikis, and something called culture jamming. From my research, I realized that culture jamming is basically a way of having students take popular forms of advertisements and then kind of modifying them to ridicule
consumer America. So it pretty much has the principles of critical literacy, where we're asking students to think about the world in which we live in and take social responsibility and so let's start talking about how some of these new literacies could be applied within each of these content areas. Within art, I have 4 examples for you. The first example that you see is an example of a web quest that students could conduct on the line and design of Oaxacan sculptures. The second example you see is a virtual tour of an art gallery. So it's very expensive, of course, to actually go and visit art galleries, but this is a way to bring art gallery directly to your classroom. The third example is of a kid blog. I know that Jess discussed the importance of critiques and using specific vocabulary within her presentation. This is an extension of that, where KidBlog would be a safe ground for students to share their artwork and then to critique one another. And the last image you see, it gives you a link to a YouTube video where students could sit down and watch the 13 watercolor technique. Of course, YouTube has so many applications. You could really watch demonstrations of practically any art skill, and students could also create their own demonstrations to show that they're able to use different art techniques. Within GYM, the main focus should be on tracking and recording progress throughout time using new literacies. So the first image I have for you shows you a screenshot of a website called Fitnessgram, where students are able to create goals for themselves and then use it almost as a log to go back and view. Teachers can have access to this, and this is also linked to the presidential's fitness campaign. So data is tracked throughout time. The second image I have for you is using online text such as NBC News, where students could read articles about health and physical activity issues of today. The third image I have for you is a little screenshot of an online graphic novel talking about the importance of teamwork as you are participating in a team sport. Other examples of new literacy in physical education and health include personal and shared classroom blogs. So you could use KidBlog, you could use Fitnessgram, you could have students sharing sports and health articles within these blogs. And another example would be to online newsletter for both students and parents about ways to eat healthy, ways to exercise, how to take care of yourself. The first image you see for an example of integrating new literacies in music is an image of a screenshot from a video that Bill had sent me. It basically talks about how music can be combined with movement to improve literacy skills. So if you have a moment, please check out that video. Let us know what you think. The second image is a screenshot of a video that I found on Teaching Channel, where a teacher basically had her students write haiku poems. She connected this to a social studies unit. Her students were learning about Japan. So they were encouraged to use their 5 senses to write haiku poems, and they had to create 3D images of an object that they were trying to describe using their 5 sentences. After they created their 3D images, they had to write music for their haiku poem and use different instruments in which they then recorded themselves using technology. The third image you see is a screenshot from a virtual tour that I personally took through the John F. Kay Art Center. So you can visit different amphitheaters on virtual tours directly in your classroom, kind of like how you can go on an art tour from anywhere. Other examples of using new literacies within music include using YouTube to listen to and create music, iMovie, GarageBand to create music, studying movie soundtracks, listening to online radio stations, and to have reflective writing and sharing on blogs. Even though none of us are art, music, physical education, or health teachers, we all can incorporate these new literacies and these approaches within our classrooms. It's essential for us as elementary, middle school, and high school teachers to consider the implications that utilizing these new literacies in our classroom could have, and to really think about the power that they bring to our classrooms. I hope that you found that there are some applications, maybe it sparked your interest and you're willing to try something new in your classroom next week using one of these online resources that I've provided for you. If you have any questions about any of these virtual tours or videos or websites that I've given to you, please feel free to ask me. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And if you have any comments on any of them, I'm very interested to hear. Thank you.
How can the literacy coach support content area teachers? We came up with several strategies when we met. First, we said they could provide the curriculum map, help the teachers understand that better. Professional development, basically connecting in how to connect language arts to the 3 subject areas, using technology, using any sort of resources the school may have, the language arts or literacy coach may have, and also the teachers, things they might have researched and tried on their own. Providing rubrics for teacher assessment and student self-assessment. The reflective practice, I guess you would call it. Having teachers and really open to reflecting on their own practices, and then having students reflect on themselves as well and use that data to drive instruction further on. And letter D. When we met, we talked about the way we were collaborating and how that is something paramount to successful leadership as a literacy coach, getting teachers talking in a safe environment. We have a quote from Literacy Leadership and Literacy Coaches. As teachers collaboratively discuss student learning and their practice, they create a learning community. Although the focus on student learning is paramount, the discussions are powerful, as they also involve teachers sharing their perspectives on what and why literacy instruction works. Discussing multiple perspectives within a learning community helps teachers understand why they teach as they do. I just want to kind of sum this up, that the collaborative part is really the most essential piece to this. Everyone has to be open to it. They have to be willing to reflect on what they're doing, look at possible areas for improvement, and then as a team, including the literacy coach, not as necessarily a coach, but as a peer, investigate what they can do to improve and enhance current best practice instructions on all areas with literacy infused throughout. You have to look at what's working and why what isn't working. Now, letter E is essential for me, modeling strategies and lessons. At my school, literacy coaches basically come in, they sit behind an iPad for about an hour, then they come back and tell me what they think I should try. I kind of like the phrase walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. Come in and show me. If you think there's something that I can learn, and I am a visual learner as it is, then come in and do it for me. Show me how to make my instruction better, and I guarantee you that I will incorporate it. There's no doubt. I mean, I'll try it anyway, but I don't think literacy coaches should consider themselves so much above teachers that they won't be willing to get their hands dirty in the classroom and get down to business showing teachers what the best thing they can do is. So at the end, we have response to interventions, helping to assess student work, such as in our lesson protocol that we are learning this course, and asking yourselves, what did the students gather? What is evident about their understanding from the learning artifacts? To go along with this, you know, the literacy coach position, or the literacy coach view, to me, and working with Julia and Jessica, we took this assignment, and first we dissected it, and we each took a certain content area. Then we met together, and what we did was we put our information all on a shared Google Doc. Then we took that and got together again, and we met, and we decided to split the presentation and slideshows into questions so that we were presenting collaborative research work done by all 3 of us in each piece. So it really took a lot of working together, a lot of respect, peer respect, and peer I don't know, just basically, I guess, respect, peer respect, and it was a joy working all 3 of us together, splitting it up initially and then putting it back together and splitting it up in a totally different way. So both times we all learned something different from each other. and from the research we did. So we hope you liked the presentation. Enjoy.